The neutral station floated in the cold darkness of space, like a metal flower with many arms reaching out toward the star's captain, Lisa. Martinez walked through the long corridors with careful steps, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She had been a combat medic before becoming a diplomatic escort, and her eyes still moved like a soldier checking every corner and shadow. The Zephyrian delegation waited in the great dining hall, and Lisa could hear their deep voices rumbling like distant thunder through the thick walls. War Chiefess Kathvara stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that looked like black glass covering her massive frame. Her second-in-command battle sister, Vextera, paced back and forth like a caged predator, showing rows of sharp teeth when she smiled. Lisa entered the hall with Commander Amy Johnson at her side. Amy had been chosen to head security for the human delegation, because she never showed fear even when facing enemies twice her size. Dr. Rachel Stone followed behind them, carrying her data tablets and looking nervous about the meeting ahead. Though dinner tables stretched across the center of the room, made from some kind of alien wood that glowed with soft blue light. The Zephyrians had already taken their seats on one side, leaving the humans to sit across from them like opposing armies. Before a battle, Kathvara watched Lisa sit down, and her yellow eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement or hunger. Lisa could not tell which. The war chiefess lifted a tall glass filled with ceremonial acid wine that bubbled and steamed in the cool air of the station. Ambassador Helen Rodriguez began speaking about trade agreements and peaceful cooperation between their two species. But Lisa noticed that Kathvara was not really listening. Instead, the alien warrior kept staring at the humans, with that strange gleaming look in her reptilian eyes. The acid wine in Kathvara's glass glowed bright green and gave off vapors that made the air shimmer. Lisa had read about this drink in the cultural briefings. It was made from the sap of trees that grew on the Zephyrian homeworld, and it was hot enough to melt through most metals without warning. Kathvara stood up quickly, and her massive hand tilted the glass. The burning liquid splashed across the table and poured directly onto Lisa's left hand. The acid wine was so hot that steam rose from her skin immediately, and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Lisa felt the terrible burning pain shoot up her arm like lightning, but she did not scream. She did not even gasp. Instead, she calmly reached for a cloth napkin with her other hand and wrapped it around the injured area. Her face stayed completely calm, as if nothing had happened at all. The Zephyrians began to laugh, and their deep voices echoed off the metal walls like the sound of rocks falling down a mountain. Kathvara pointed at Lisa with one clawed finger and spoke in her rumbling voice. The humans are pain deaf, she said to her warriors. They cannot even feel when they are being burned. This one does not cry or scream or show any sign that she knows she is injured. Battle Sister Vextera joined in the laughter and slammed her fist on the table, making the dishes jump. The sound was like a hammer hitting an anvil. She looked at Lisa with something like pity in her yellow eyes. Sure, species must be broken, she said. How can you fight enemies if you cannot feel when they hurt you? How can you know when to retreat if your body cannot warn you of danger? This is why humans are weak, Commander. Amy Johnson started to stand up with anger in her eyes, but Lisa held up her uninjured hand to stop her. The cloth around Lisa's burned hand was already turning red with blood and other fluids, but she acted as if it was nothing more than a small scratch. Dr. Rachel Stone stared at the Zephyrians with shock on her face. She had studied their culture for years and knew that they valued strength above all other things in their society. Warriors proved themselves by enduring great pain without showing weakness. But she also knew they were wrong about humans. Kathvara continued her mocking speech, while Lisa sat quietly and let the cloth absorb the fluids from her burn. The war chiefess explained to her warriors that humans must have lost the ability to feel pain during their evolution. This made them unfit to be allies because they could not understand true strength. A species that cannot feel pain cannot know courage, she declared. Courage comes from feeling fear and pain and choosing to continue fighting anyway. These humans are like walking corpses who do not know they are already dead. The other Zephyrians nodded and made sounds of agreement. Their scales caught the blue light from the table and made them look like living shadows with glowing eyes. Lisa watched them all carefully and noticed how they held themselves like warriors who had never lost a battle. Ambassador Rodriguez tried to continue the negotiations, but the atmosphere in the room had changed completely. The Zephyrians no longer seemed interested in making peace. They looked at the humans like predators studying prey that was too weak to be worth hunting battle. Sister Vexthera stood up and walked around the table until she was standing directly behind Lisa's chair. Her massive frame cast a shadow over the human captain, and her breath felt hot against the back of Lisa's neck. She reached down with one clawed hand and pressed it against Lisa's shoulder. The pressure was enough to crack bones, but Lisa did not move or make any sound. The Zephyrian warrior pressed harder, and Lisa could feel her uniform starting to tear under the sharp claws. Still no reaction. Vexthera said with disappointment in her voice, "They truly are pain deaf. This one feels nothing even when I could tear her apart with my bare hands." Lisa finally spoke, and her voice was calm and steady, like a teacher explaining something simple to a student. "I can feel everything," she said. "I know my hand is badly burned, and I know your claws are cutting through my uniform. But feeling pain and showing panic are two different things." The Zephyrians stopped laughing and stared at her with confusion in their yellow eyes. Kethvara tilted her massive head to one side like a predator trying to understand strange prey. "You feel the pain, but do not react?" the war chiefess asked. "This makes no sense. How can a warrior function if they do not respond to injury? How do you know when to seek medical treatment or when to retreat from battle?" Lisa unwrapped the cloth from her hand and showed the Zephyrians the deep burns that covered her palm and fingers. The flesh was red and blistered and would clearly need immediate medical attention, but her expression remained calm and professional. "Humans learn to manage pain," she explained. "We feel everything, but we also learn to think through the pain to make decisions based on logic rather than just reaction. This burn needs treatment, but it does not prevent me from continuing this meeting." The dining hall fell silent, except for the soft humming of the station's life support systems. The Zephyrians looked at each other with expressions that Lisa could not read. Their earlier confidence seemed to be fading into something that might have been uncertainty or even concern. Kethra sat back down in her chair, slowly, and her yellow eyes never left Lisa's face. The war chiefess seemed to be thinking about something important, and her scales shifted color slightly from black to dark gray. "Changes nothing," she finally said, after a long pause. "Your people are still weak, because they do not understand that pain makes warriors strong. You cannot know true courage if you do not properly fear injury." But Lisa could see doubt in the alien warrior's eyes, and she knew that something had changed. The negotiations would continue, but now the Zephyrians were no longer completely certain about human weakness. The next morning brought tension that filled the air like electricity before a storm. Lieutenant Katie Brooks stood guard outside the human quarters, with her rifle held ready. Her left leg still ached from the combat injuries she had received 3 months ago, but she ignored the constant pain the same way she ignored hunger or thirst. Medical Officer Beth Turner finished treating Lisa's burned hand in the small medical bay. The flesh would heal, but it would take weeks and leave permanent scars. Beth had seen much worse injuries during her battlefield service, and she worked with steady hands while Lisa sat perfectly still. The negotiations were supposed to resume at noon, but everyone knew the real talking would happen in the corridors and meeting rooms where diplomats made their private deals. Ambassador Helen Rodriguez walked back and forth in her office like a caged animal. She had spent 20 years learning how to make peace between hostile species, but the Zephyrians were unlike any aliens she had ever encountered. War Chiefess Kethvara had sent a message during the night cycle, requesting a private meeting with the human leadership. The message was written in the formal language that Zephyrians used for important communications, but Beth could sense the anger beneath the polite words. Dr. Rachel Stone sat in the station's library reading everything she could find about Zephyrian culture and biology. The aliens came from a harsh world where survival meant constant fighting against predators that could tear through metal with their claws. Their entire society was built around the idea that strength came from enduring pain and suffering. The library was quiet, except for the soft humming of computer systems and the distant sound of the station's engines. Rachel had always found peace in research, but today, the information she discovered made her more worried rather than less. The Zephyrians truly believed that species who could not feel pain properly were evolutionary failures destined for extinction. At exactly noon, the human delegation entered the main conference room. Kethvara was already waiting with 3 of her most trusted warriors. The war chiefess had changed from her ceremonial robes into battle armor that looked like it was made from the scales of some enormous predator. Battle Sister Vextera stood behind her commander with weapons attached to her belt that could probably cut through the station's hull. The other Zephyr warriors watched the humans enter with expressions that mixed curiosity with something that looked like hunger. Ambassador Rodriguez took her seat at the head of the human side of the table and nodded politely to the alien delegation. Lisa sat to her right with her bandaged hand resting on the metal surface. Commander Amy Johnson took position near the door, where she could watch everyone in the room. Kethvara began speaking immediately, without any of the usual diplomatic pleasantries. Her voice was deeper than usual, and her yellow eyes seemed to glow in the artificial light. "Your species has insulted mine," she said. "The way your captain ignored my test yesterday shows that humans do not understand the nature of true strength." Leaned forward in her chair and tried to keep her voice calm. "War Chiefess, we did not mean any insult. Captain Martinez was simply demonstrating human pain tolerance. Perhaps we can find a way to show mutual respect between our cultures." The massive alien leader slammed her fist on the table with enough force to crack the metal surface. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. "Your pain tolerance is not tolerance at all," she roared. "It is numbness, a species that cannot properly feel. Injury cannot understand." Karagavixtera stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. The object looked like a crystal flower, with many sharp edges that caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. "This is a neural disruptor," she explained. "We use these devices to train our young warriors in the management of pain." The battle sister activated the device, and it began to glow with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. She placed her massive hand on the crystal surface, and immediately her body went rigid. Every muscle tensed, and her scales shifted from black to bright red as waves of agony passed through her nervous system. For 30 seconds, Vexthera endured the neural disruption while standing perfectly still. The only signs of her suffering were the color changes in her scales and the way her claws dug deep grooves in the metal table. When the time ended, she removed her hand and looked at the humans with pride in her yellow eyes. "This is level 3. Intensity," she said, "which is the standard training level for Zephyrian children who have reached their 8th year. Any warrior who cannot endure this pain for the full duration is considered unfit for military service." Sekathera gestured toward the device. With one clawed hand, "Your captain claims that humans can feel pain but do not react to it properly. If this is true, then she should be able to match what our children accomplish routinely. I challenge her to demonstrate human pain tolerance." Using our methods, the conference room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the neural disruptor. Ambassador Rodriguez looked at Lisa with concern in her eyes. The device was clearly designed for alien physiology, and there was no way to know how it would affect human nervous systems. Dr. Rachel Stone studied the crystal device with scientific curiosity, but also with worry. She had read about Zephyrian neural disruptors in her research. They were designed to create pure pain without physical damage by directly stimulating nerve pathways. The aliens used them for training, and sometimes for punishment. Lisa looked at her bandaged hand, and then at the glowing crystal device. She knew that accepting this challenge could be dangerous. Human nervous systems were different from Zephyrian ones, and the disruptor might cause permanent damage, but she also knew that refusing would confirm alien beliefs about human weakness. "I accept the challenge," she said calmly, Ambassador Rodriguez started to protest, but Lisa held up her good hand to stop her. If this device can help prove that humans are not pain deaf, then I am willing to try it. Battle. Sister Vextera adjusted the settings on the neural disruptor and explained how it worked. The crystal would send waves of artificial pain through any nervous system that touched it. The intensity could be adjusted from level 1, which caused mild discomfort, to level 10, which was reserved for interrogating enemy prisoners. Lisa placed her uninjured hand on the crystal surface and immediately understood why the Zephyrians considered this a test of courage. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was not the sharp burning of her acid wine injury or the dull ache of old wounds. Instead, it felt like electricity and fire and ice all flowing through her nerves at the same time. But Lisa had learned pain management during her medical training and her combat service. She knew how to breathe through agony and how to separate the sensation of pain from the emotional response to suffering. She kept her hand on the crystal and began counting seconds in her mind. The Zephyrians watched with growing amazement as Lisa endured the level 3 neural disruption. Without making any sound, her face showed concentration rather than agony, and she even turned to look at Ambassador Rodriguez while the device sent waves of artificial pain through her body. When 30 seconds had passed, Lisa removed her hand from the crystal and flexed her fingers to make sure they still worked. Normally, the neural disruptor had left no physical damage, but she could still feel echoes of the artificial pain in her nervous system. HFY stared at Lisa with confusion and something that might have been respect. "How did you endure that pain while maintaining such control?" she asked. "Our warriors spend years learning to tolerate neural disruption at that level." Lisa smiled slightly and gestured toward her bandaged hand. "Humans learn pain management from childhood," she explained. "We fall down and scrape our knees, but we get up and keep playing. We burn ourselves on hot stoves, but we learn to cook anyway. Pain is just information, and we learn to process that information without letting it control our actions." The war chiefess looked at her warriors, and Lisa could see uncertainty in their yellow eyes. The confident mockery from the previous day was gone, and in its place was something that looked like curiosity, mixed with concern. "This proves nothing," Vextera said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Level 3 is barely adequate for children. Let us see how your captain handles the intensity that our adult warriors must endure." She adjusted the neural disruptor to level 5, and the crystal began glowing brighter. The rainbow patterns on the walls became more intense, and the device hummed with additional power. This was the maximum level used in Sferian military training, and few aliens could endure it for more than a few seconds. Lisa placed her hand on the crystal again, and immediately felt the difference. The artificial pain was now strong enough to make her muscles tremble, and her vision blur slightly, but she had experienced worse during combat operations, when adrenaline and determination were the only things standing between her and death. She kept her hand on the device and began reciting multiplication tables. In her mind, this was an old medical school trick for managing pain during long surgical procedures by forcing her brain to work on mathematical problems. She could prevent the pain from overwhelming her conscious thoughts. The Zephyrians watched in complete silence as Lisa endured level 5 neural disruption for the full 30 seconds. When she finally removed her hand, her arm was shaking slightly, but her expression remained calm and professional. War Chiefess Kethvara stood up slowly, and her massive frame seemed to fill the entire room. She looked at Lisa with an expression that the human captain could not identify. It was not mockery or anger or even respect. Instead, it was something that looked almost like fear. The silence in the conference room stretched on like a held breath. Chief Petty Officer Dana Walsh entered through the side door, carrying maintenance reports that needed Ambassador Rodriguez's signature. Her steps were slightly uneven, but she moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to work around constant discomfort. War Chiefess Kethvara pointed at Dana with one massive clawed finger. "That human walks strangely," she observed as she injured in some way that prevents proper movement. Dr. Rachel Stone looked up from her data tablet and realized this might be an opportunity to help the Zephyrians understand human pain tolerance better. Dana has a chronic condition that causes constant pain in her joints and spine, she explained, but she continues to perform her duties at full capacity, despite the discomfort. Battle sister Vexthera tilted her head like a predator, studying unusual prey. Constant pain, she repeated. How can any warrior function effectively while suffering continuous injury? This makes no sense from a tactical perspective. Dana set down her reports and looked at the assembled aliens with curiosity rather than fear. She had been dealing with her condition for 12 years, and had long ago learned to treat pain as just another environmental factor like temperature or humidity. Have something called arthritis, she explained to the Zephyrians, in simple terms. My joints are inflamed, and my spine has several damaged areas that send pain signals to my brain every moment of every day. But pain is just information, and I have learned to filter out information that is not immediately. Usfil Kethvara stood up to her full 8-foot height and stared down at Dana. With amazement. You feel pain constantly, but you continue working, she asked. How do you concentrate on complex tasks when your body is warning you of injury? Smiled and pulled out her data tablet showing detailed engineering schematics for the station's power systems. Yesterday I redesigned the entire plasma flow network while my pain levels were at their worst for the week. The discomfort actually helps me focus because I know I need to work efficiently to get back to my quarters and rest. Sergeant Kelly Thompson entered the room at that moment to deliver a security update. Her movements were smooth and controlled, but Rachel noticed the way she held her left shoulder higher than her right. Kelly had been assigned to the diplomatic mission specifically because of her ability to remain calm under pressure. Rachel. Stone decided to continue the demonstration of human pain tolerance. Kelly, would you mind showing our Zephyrian guests your medical scans from last month? She asked. Kelly nodded and activated the holographic display system built into the conference table. A three-dimensional image of her spine appeared floating above the metal surface. The image showed several pieces of metal embedded near her spinal cord, along with areas of damaged tissue that glowed red in the medical scan. This shrapnel has been lodged near my spine for 2 years. Kelly explained to the fascinated aliens. The metal fragments press against nerve clusters and send constant pain signals throughout my body. The doctors say removing them would be more dangerous than leaving them in place. Vexthera leaned closer to examine the holographic spine with the trained eye of a warrior who had seen many injuries. How do you function as a soldier with metal cutting into your nerves? She asked. This injury should leave you unable to fight or even walk properly. Kelly laughed, and the sound was genuine rather than bitter. I passed all my physical fitness tests last month and scored in the top 10% for marksmanship, she said. Pain does not automatically mean disability. I have learned to work with my body rather than against it. Dr. Megan Foster chose that moment to enter the conference room carrying her research files. She was a specialist in human neurological responses who had been studying pain management techniques for the past decade. Her timing could not have been better for demonstrating human capabilities. Megan activated her portable computer and began displaying charts and graphs that showed human brain activity during pain experiences. The Zephyrians watched with growing fascination as the data revealed the complexity of human pain. Processing human pain tolerance is not about feeling less pain, she explained to the alien delegation. We actually have very sensitive pain receptors that can detect incredibly small amounts of tissue damage. But we also have sophisticated psychological mechanisms for managing those pain signals. The charts showed brain scans of humans undergoing various painful experiences. The images revealed that human brains could simultaneously process pain information while maintaining higher cognitive functions, like problem-solving and creative thinking. Kethvar studied the brain scans with the intensity of a military strategist, analyzing enemy capabilities. Your species can think clearly while experiencing significant pain, she observed. This is a tactical advantage that we did not recognize. Megan nodded and pulled up additional research data. Human children begin learning pain management techniques from infancy, she said. When a child falls and scrapes their knee, they learn that crying brings comfort, but continuing to play brings joy. We develop the ability to choose our response to pain rather than being controlled by it. Battle. Sister Vexthera looked at the humans in the room with new understanding. So when Captain Martinez did not react to the acid wine burn, she was not demonstrating numbness, but rather demonstrating control. Exactly, Rachel said. The ability to remain functional while injured is a survival trait that humans developed over millions of years. Our ancestors had to keep hunting and gathering food even when they were hurt or sick. The individuals who could work through pain were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. The war chiefess began pacing around the conference room, like a caged predator, but her movements showed thoughtfulness rather than aggression. This explains much about human military effectiveness, she said. Your soldiers can continue fighting even after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate other species. Commander Amy Johnson decided to add her own experience to the discussion. I have seen human soldiers complete missions with broken bones, internal bleeding, and severe burns, she said. Not because they could not feel the pain, but because they could feel the pain and choose to accomplish their objectives. Anyway, Dana Walsh pulled up her work records. On the conference room display, during the past year, I have completed over 300 complex engineering projects, she said. My pain levels varied from mild discomfort to severe agony during that time, but my work quality remained consistently high, because I separate physical sensation from job performance. The Zephyrians exchanged glances, and their yellow eyes showed confusion mixed with something that might have been admiration. Kethvara returned to her seat and leaned forward to study. The humans more carefully. You are saying that human strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from experiencing pain and choosing to continue anyway, she said slowly. This is a concept that we did not expect from a species we believed to be pain. Def Kelly Thompson nodded and gestured toward her spine scan. Every day I wake up with significant pain, she said. Every day I choose to get up anyway and do my job to the best of my ability. This is not unusual for humans. We learn early that life includes suffering and that we can either let suffering control us, or we can control our response to suffering. Dar Foster added more brain scan data to the holographic display. These images show human pain processing during extreme situations. She explained the same individuals who can laugh while injured also show increased activity in brain regions associated with empathy and compassion. Experiencing pain does not make humans callous. Instead, it often makes them more sensitive to the suffering of others. Vexthera stood up and walked closer to the brain scan displays. Your species uses pain as a teacher rather than simply as a warning system, she observed. This creates psychological strength that we mistook for physical numbness. The conference room fell quiet as the Zephyrians processed this new information about human capabilities. Kethvara sat back in her chair, and her scales shifted from bright red to deep purple, which Rachel recognized as a sign of deep thought in Zephyrian body language. We have made a serious error in judgment, the war chiefess finally said. Your species is not weak or defective. Instead, you have developed capabilities that our culture did not recognize or understand. Ambassador Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the negotiations had begun. Perhaps we can learn from each other, she suggested. Your people have developed physical toughness, and our people have developed psychological resilience together. We might be stronger than either species alone. But before anyone could respond to the ambassador's suggestion, an emergency alarm began wailing throughout the station. The sharp sound cut through the air like a blade, and red warning lights began flashing in every corridor. Emergency in civilian quarters section 7, a mechanical voice announced over the station's communication system. Plasma conduit rupture with fire hazard. All personnel evacuate immediately. The humans and Zephyrians looked at each other with shared concern. Civilian quarters section 7 was where many of the diplomatic families were staying, including several human children who had come with their parents. The plasma fire would be hot enough to melt through metal, and the toxic gases could kill within minutes. Everyone in the conference room stood up at the same time and began moving toward the door, but as they entered the corridor they could hear something that made them all stop and listen. A child was crying somewhere. In the direction of the fire, the emergency sirens wailed through the station corridors. As Captain Lisa Martinez ran toward civilian quarters Section 7, the metal walls glowed red from the warning lights, and the air tasted like burning plastic and hot metal. Smoke was already seeping through the ventilation systems, making breathing difficult. War Chiefess Kathvara kept pace beside Lisa. Despite her massive size, the alien warrior moved with surprising grace for someone so large. Her yellow eyes reflected the emergency lights as she scanned for signs of danger ahead. Battle Sister Vextera followed close behind with her weapons ready. They reached the sealed blast door that separated Section 7 from the rest of the station. The metal barrier was glowing cherry red from the heat on the other side, and warning signs in multiple languages flashed danger messages above the entrance maintenance tech. Lisa Parker was working frantically at the door controls, trying to override the safety systems. The plasma conduit blew. 20 minutes ago, Parker shouted over the noise of the alarms. There is a family trapped in Habitat 12. The automatic system sealed them in to prevent the fire from spreading, but now they cannot get out. Commander Amy Johnson arrived with her security team and immediately began setting up a command post. Dr. Rachel Stone ran up carrying her medical scanner and emergency supplies. Her face was pale, but determined. As she prepared to treat burn victims through the thick blast door, they could all hear the sound of a child crying. The voice was high and scared, but it was also talking rather than just screaming. 8-year-old Emma Collins was trapped behind a wall of superheated plasma that would instantly kill most species. Mrs. Julie Collins, Emma's mother, stood pressed against the blast door, crying and trying to communicate with her daughter through the metal barrier. "Emma, can you hear me?" she called out. "You need to stay away from the hot parts and find somewhere safe to wait." TMA voice came back faint but clear through the door. "I am okay, Mama," she said, but her voice shook with fear. "It is really hot in here, like when we went to the desert. But much hotter. My teddy bear says we should be brave." Dr. Patricia Hill arrived carrying psychological evaluation equipment. She was a specialist in child behavior who had been studying human development patterns. The emergency had interrupted her research, but now she might be able to help save a child life. "Ma, this is Dr. Hill," she called through the door. "Your mama asked me to help you. Can you tell me what you see around you right now?" The little girl voice came back stronger. "Now I see lots of orange and red lights," she said, "and there is steam everywhere, like in the bathroom after Mama takes a hot shower. The walls are really warm and my clothes are getting wet from all the sweating." War Chiefess Kathvara listened to this exchange with growing amazement. The child had been trapped in lethal conditions for over 20 minutes, but she was still conscious and able to communicate clearly. Most adult Safarians would have been unconscious from heat stroke by now. The blast door controls finally responded to Lisa Parker's override commands, but when the barrier slid open, a wave of superheated air rushed out that forced everyone to step back. The temperature in the corridor was now hot enough to cause burns on exposed skin. Through the opening they could see the habitat interior, glowing like the inside of a furnace. Plasma flames danced along the walls and ceiling, creating patterns of blue and white fire that moved like living creatures. The air shimmered with heat waves that made everything look like a mirage. Ma was trapped in the back corner of the habitat behind a maze of burning debris that blocked the direct path to safety. The fallen ceiling panels and twisted metal furniture created a tunnel of fire that would have to be crossed to reach Harma. "We need you to crawl through the hot parts to get to us," Dr. Hill called out. "I know it will hurt, but you are brave enough to do this. Can you see a path through the fire?" The 8-year-old girl appeared at the far end of the burning tunnel. Her small face was red from heat exposure, and her clothes were already singed in several places. But her eyes were bright and alert as she studied the obstacle course of flames and debris. "Looks like a really hot playground," she said with a voice that mixed fear and determination. My teddy bear says we should pretend we are explorers, going through a volcano, to find treasure battle. Sister Vexthera stared at the child with disbelief. A human youngling is conscious and making jokes while trapped in conditions that would kill our adult warriors, she said to Kethvara. How is this possible? Emma began crawling through the burning debris tunnel, moving slowly but steadily toward the exit. Her small hands and knees came into contact with metal hot enough to cause second-degree burns, but she continued forward, talking to her stuffed animal the entire time. Do not worry, Teddy, she said as she crawled over a piece of twisted metal that glowed red hot. It is just like when we touch the stove by accident. It hurts, but it does not last forever. Mama will fix us up when we get out. Darhill kept talking to Emma to help guide her through the maze of fire. Emma, you are doing great, she called. Just keep moving toward my voice, and remember to take small breaths so the hot air does not hurt your lungs. The little girl giggled, even as she crawled across burning debris that was leaving painful burns on her skin. Teddy says, the hot air tickles, she reported. This is like the worst camping trip ever, but at least we will have a good story to tell Daddy when we get home. Kethvara watched this display of human endurance with something approaching religious awe. The child was demonstrating pain tolerance that exceeded anything in Zephyrian military training, yet she was not a warrior or even an adult. She was just an ordinary human child treating a life-threatening emergency like an uncomfortable adventure. Emma reached a section where the ceiling had collapsed, creating a narrow gap barely wide enough for her small body. She would have to squeeze through an opening surrounded by flames, while metal debris pressed against her back and shoulders. This part looks really tight, she observed, but I think I can fit. Teddy is smaller than me, so he will go first to make sure it is safe. The stuffed animal went through the gap, and Emma followed immediately. Her shirt caught fire briefly before she could pat out the flames. Her hair was singed, and her exposed skin showed angry red burns, but she kept moving forward with steady determination. Almost there, Emma, Dr. Hill encouraged. Keep coming toward us. You are being so brave. The little girl finally emerged from the burning tunnel and stumbled into Lisa Martinez's arms. Her clothes were blackened and torn. Her skin showed multiple burn injuries, and her hair was shorter from being singed, but she was conscious, alert, and even managed a small smile. Did I do good? She asked while Lisa carried her away from the flames. I tried to be brave, like Teddy taught Mimesis. Collins rushed forward to embrace her daughter with tears streaming down her face, but Emma seemed more concerned about her stuffed animal than her own injuries. She held the singed toy close and whispered comfort to it. It is okay, Teddy. The fire is gone now, she said. Mama will give us medicine for the hot OEs, and we will feel better soon. The Zephyrians followed the rescue group to the medical bay, where Dr. Patricia Hill began treating Emma burns. The injuries were serious and would require weeks of healing, but the child sat patiently during treatment, continuing to comfort her stuffed animal and chat about the Adventure War chiefess. Kethvara stood in the corner of the medical bay watching the treatment process with complete silence. Her yellow eyes never left Emma's face as the 8-year-old girl talked cheerfully about the rescue while medical instruments treated her burned skin. She feels the pain, Kethvara finally said to Battle Sister Vexthera. Look at her face when the medical scanner touches the damaged areas. She knows she is hurt, but she chooses to focus on other things. Instead, Vexthera nodded slowly. The human youngling demonstrated greater pain tolerance than our finest adult warriors, she observed. Yet she did this not through warrior training but through something else entirely. Durhill finished the immediate treatment, and Emma was given medicine to help manage her pain, but even with her injuries wrapped in medical bandages, the little girl seemed more interested in making sure everyone else was okay. Is everyone safe? She asked, looking around the medical bay. Did the fire hurt anybody else? I was worried about the people in the other rooms. Lisa Martinez knelt down beside Emma's bed and smiled at the brave little girl. Everyone else got out safely, she said. You were the only one who was trapped, but you saved yourself by being so brave. Ma hugged her singed teddy bear closer and looked thoughtful. Teddy says being brave does not mean you are not scared, she said. It means you do what you need to do even when you are scared, and it hurts. The words hung in the air of the medical bay like a challenge to everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about courage and strength. War Chiefess Kethvara stared at the human child with an expression that mixed wonder with something that looked almost like fear. 3 days after the fire incident, Emma Collins sat in the station recreation area playing with other children. Her burns were healing quickly, thanks to advanced medical treatment, but the bandages on her arms and face served as visible reminders of her ordeal. She laughed and ran with the same energy as any 8-year-old, completely unbothered by her recent brush with death. Admiral Susan Mitchell had arrived from Earth Fleet Command to oversee the final negotiations. The presence of such a high-ranking officer showed how important these talks had become. Admiral Mitchell was known throughout the fleet as someone who could make peace with the most hostile alien species. War Chiefess Kethvara sat in her private quarters, staring at video recordings of Emma rescue. The alien warrior had watched the footage dozens of times, trying to understand what she had witnessed. A human child had endured conditions that would have killed trained Zephyrian soldiers, and she had done it while laughing and comforting a stuffed toy. Elder Seer Yithsolna materialized in the quarter's doorway, like a living shadow. The ancient Zephyrian was over 300 years old, and served as both philosopher and historian for their people. Her scales had faded to silver with age, but her yellow eyes still burned with fierce intelligence. You sent for me, War Chiefess, she said, in a voice like wind through stone. You said you needed guidance about the human species. Kethva gestured toward the video display where Emma could be seen crawling through burning debris. This human youngling accomplished something that challenges everything we believe about strength and courage, she said. How does a child demonstrate such endurance without any warrior training? The elder seer studied the footage with the careful attention of someone who had spent centuries analyzing the behavior of different species. She watched Emma emerge from the flames, talking to her teddy bear and showing concern for others despite her own injuries. This is not endurance in the way we understand it, Yithsolna said slowly. This is something else entirely. The child does not ignore pain or overcome it through will. She accepts pain as part of the experience and continues living fully, despite its presence. Dear Carol Wright entered the conference room, carrying research files about human evolutionary development. She was a specialist in how different species adapted to survive in hostile environments. Her studies had taken her to dozens of worlds, where life had found ways to thrive under impossible conditions. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, she explained to Admiral Mitchell and the assembled diplomats. Our ancestors had to chase prey animals across vast distances, often while injured or exhausted. The individuals who could continue functioning despite pain, hunger, and fatigue were the ones who survived to pass on their genes. Battle sister Vextera listened to this explanation with the attention of a warrior studying enemy tactics. So human pain tolerance is not a weakness, but a highly developed survival mechanism, she observed. Your species learned to treat suffering as temporary, rather than defeating. Captain Nicole Davis had just arrived from the medical evacuation ship that brought supplies and additional personnel. She had flown through dangerous asteroid fields to reach the station, and her uniform still showed signs of the difficult journey. I have transported hundreds of injured humans during combat operations, she reported to Admiral Mitchell. The thing that always amazes medical personnel is how human patients continue making jokes and asking about others. Even while suffering severe injuries, they seem to view pain as an inconvenience rather than a catastrophe. Emma Collins entered the conference room holding her mother hand. The little girl wore a colorful dress that covered most of her healing burns, but her cheerful attitude was the same as always. She carried her teddy bear under one arm and smiled at everyone in the room, including the intimidating Zephyrian warriors. War Chiefess Kethvara knelt down to bring herself closer to Emma eye level. The massive alien warrior looked at the small human child with something approaching reverence in her yellow eyes. Young human, she said in her deep rumbling voice. I want to understand how you remained brave during the fire my own warriors train for years to develop such courage. How did you learn to be so strong? Ma tilted her head thoughtfully and hugged her teddy bear. I was not really brave, she said. I was really scared, and it hurt a lot, but Teddy taught me that being scared is okay. And being hurt is okay to you. Just have to remember that scary things and hurting things do not last forever. The Zephyrian war chiefess stared at the child with amazement. This wisdom would be considered profound among our philosophers, she said. Yet you speak of it as if it were simple common knowledge. Ma giggled and held up her stuffed animal. Teddy says that being brave is not about not being scared, she explained. Being brave is about doing what you need to do, even when you are scared. It is like when I have to get shots at the doctor. I cry because it hurts, but I still let the doctor help me get better. Elder Seer Yith Sona approached Emma with the careful respect that Zephyrians usually reserved for honored military leaders. Small human, would you be willing to teach our young warriors about courage? Your methods seem more effective than our traditional training. The 8-year-old girl looked at the ancient alien with curiosity rather than fear. I do not know how to teach warriors, she said, but I could teach them about teddy bears. Teddy bears are very good at being brave because they always stay calm, and they always try to help their friends at morale. Mitchell watched this exchange with growing understanding. The key to a successful alliance was not just military cooperation, but cultural exchange that allowed both species to learn from each other. The humans could learn Zephyrian physical toughness, while the Zephyrians could learn human psychological resilience. War Chiefess Kethvara stood up slowly and addressed Admiral Mitchell with formal diplomatic language. The Zephyrian Empire formally requests an alliance with the human species, she declared. We also request permission to study human psychological training methods. Our warriors could benefit greatly from learning your techniques, Ambassador. Helen Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the negotiations had begun. The alliance would bring benefits to both species, but more importantly, it would create a friendship based on mutual respect and understanding rather than fear. Dr. Patricia Hill pulled out her research notes. About child development patterns, perhaps we could establish an exchange program. She suggested human children could learn Zephyrian physical conditioning, while Zephyrian young could learn human emotional resilience techniques. Emma clapped her hands with excitement. Can I help teach the alien kids about teddy bears? She asked. Teddy really wants to meet some new friends, and maybe he can help them learn about being brave. Battle Sister Vexthera knelt down beside Emma, and her massive frame made the little girl look tiny by comparison. I have a daughter about your age, she said quietly. She is training to become a warrior, but she struggles with fear during combat exercises. Perhaps your teddy bear could teach her some lessons about courage. The little girl nodded eagerly and held out her stuffed animal. Teddy says he would love to help your daughter, she said. He is very good at helping people who are scared or hurt, because that is what teddy bears do best. Over the following days, the alliance documents were signed and preparations began for cultural exchange programs. Human medical teams would train with Zephyrian healers to learn about their advanced treatments for physical trauma. Zephyrian warriors would study human psychological techniques for managing fear, and Panema Collins became an unofficial ambassador when she agreed to make a teaching video about courage that would be shown to young Zephyrians throughout their empire. Her simple explanations about dealing with fear and pain resonated with alien children who had been taught that showing emotion was a sign of weakness. The video showed Emma sitting in a comfortable chair holding her teddy bear while her burns continued to heal. She spoke directly to the camera with the natural honesty that only children possess. Being hurt is not fun, she said. But it does not have to stop you from doing important things. When I was in the fire, I was really scared, and it hurt a lot. But I knew Mama was waiting for me, and I knew Teddy needed me to be brave. So I pretended we were explorers, and that made the scary parts feel like an adventure. War Chiefess Kethvara watched the video with her own daughter, a young Zephyrian who had been struggling with combat training. The alien child listened to Emma's words with fascination, and began asking questions about fear and bravery that her warrior instructors had never been able to answer. The human youngling speaks of pain as a teacher rather than an enemy. Kethfura's daughter observed, this is different from what our trainers tell us. Maybe I should try thinking about fear the way she thinks about it. Within months, the alliance between humans and Zephyrians grew stronger than anyone had expected. The exchange programs produced remarkable results as both species learned from each other. Human soldiers gained improved physical conditioning, while Zephyrian warriors developed better psychological resilience. Emma Collins never knew that her simple words about teddy bear courage had changed the military training of an entire alien civilization. She continued playing and learning and growing up normally, but her influence spread across the galaxy as young Zephyrians learned that true strength came not from avoiding pain but from choosing hope despite suffering. The alliance endured for generations because it was built on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect to species that had nearly gone to war. Instead, became partners in exploring the galaxy, and both were stronger for having learned from the wisdom of a child and her teddy bear.